Hello, everyone. Luke Renda here, and I'm back again with Matt Presti. Matt Presti is the former president of the University of Science and Philosophy. He is a musician, a poet, a documentary filmmaker, and he's back again to continue our discussion. How you doing, Matt?
Doing well, Luke. It's good to join you again.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of finish off some slides here and go through a few bit more philosophy of you and Walter, and a little bit of just a couple slides on some of his science diagrams.
Yeah, indeed. And happy No More Georgia Guidestones Day to you.
Oh, nice. Is that a thing?
Yeah, they were demolished yesterday. Someone blew up one leg of it, and so they pushed the rest of it down. But interesting to say the least.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane. I'm so out of the loop.
I hear you.
Guidestones are down, and the Pope's coming to Canada. Oh,
Well, maybe they'll take them and re-erect them in Canada somewhere. Who knows?
God, I hope not. Whenever
They'd
I
be
hear the
better.
Pope's coming somewhere, I get a little sketched out, I'm like, something's going
Yeah,
on.
that's probably somewhere you don't want to be then.
No, it's in Saskatchewan, so I don't think you want to be there anyways. Pope or no Pope.
There you go.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's unreal.
Yeah, just made headlines yesterday, and they're not sure. Of course, they're blaming the Q people for
Right.
doing it. I don't know. It's kind of silly. It's interesting times we're in. There's no doubt there.
Mm-hmm. They
You
probably
can
blew it up
read,
themselves to cover their tracks,
think 360. You got to walk around everything so you get the full view. But yeah, that's absolutely possible. Maybe they are trying to get more people motivated to, destroy other monuments, perhaps. But, or maybe they're just trying to cover their tracks about the 500 million when so many people are sick and dying from vaccine side effects. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting
Yeah.
times to be alive.
Interesting. There's all these things like you got to pay attention a bit to what's going on, because there's so many little things you can kind of unpack with with the world stage. So interesting.
Indeed.
I didn't know that. Man, I'm out of the loop. Well, should we just jump into some slides?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Well, and in a couple weeks, Matt's gonna come back, or whenever he finishes this little presentation he's gonna do on with magnets and stuff like that, which we'll explain later, I guess.
Yeah, there's some very interesting things about magnets that helped confirm a lot of the Russell scientific assertions. Like I said, it's a manual more than a theory, and there are absolute things that one can take away from the properties of magnets that show you exactly, what Walter Russell was talking about in terms of being able to locate the creator. So be happy to get more into that as we move ahead.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be really neat. I'm excited. I think maybe perhaps, oh geez, here. I gotta set up my screen share. Let's see here. I think we'll jump into this science here of Walter Russell. I just gotta fix my screen here a little bit. Normally I set this up beforehand. I was distracted talking with Matt. Look at this. Here we go. That's working. The cold of expanded space generates the sun's heat by compressing large volume into smaller volume. The high pressure of incandescence is born from the low pressure of vacuous blackness, in accordance with the law of rhythmic balance interchange between all pairs of father-mother opposites.
Yeah, and the proof in that is in the human body. Let's just take a breath cycle. You breathe in the cold air of the Arctic, and what do you always exhale? Heat. So there's your proof. You breathe in, you can breathe in absolute cold, but you always exhale heat. Why is that? And isn't that a process that happens on the macro level as well as the micro level? So the act of compression is taking the vacuity around you, let's say cold air, you breathe in through the two poles, which are the nostrils, one's on the left hemisphere and one on the right, that spirals down into the cavity of the lungs, which then there's the reversal, which charges the blood with fresh oxygen, while at the same time, the carbon dioxide is pulled out of the blue blood, which sends that to the mouth to exhale heat, which is the byproduct of the compression of the cold. So your poles of the planet breathe in, compress, and reverse direction, and are given off at the equator. So there it is.
Cool.
And that's a process that is that's basically a universal axiom because it's the law for all bodies.
Mhm.
So
Everything is hemispherical.
yeah, in absolute sense of the word, yes. Even down to the microscopic level, you still have hemispheres of charge and discharge, or
Mhm.
dualistic processes, but that dualism is centered on the oneness from which it all springs, which is the mind behind the universe of motion.
Yeah, and everything that happens on the macro and the micro level obviously should be the same laws.
Yeah, they're ubiquitous from the micro to the macro and vice versa.
Yeah, which obviously makes sense. It's
And
ridiculous to have.
it doesn't negate dualism. In fact, it strengthens it, because all dualism is a division of one condition. So without one condition, which is the fulcrum, there would be no motion of a seesaw. Again, we've talked about this in other episodes, but it really, again, trialism is the word to use, because like the musician thinks with both hemispheres of the brain simultaneously, right?
Right.
So you're getting the advantage of whole brain thinking, which is this, right? So, you're master of opposites, but you're part of the opposites, the world of opposites nonetheless. So it's a really cool formula for understanding how the universe actually works as a mind wave universe of cause, um, manifesting the effects of a dualistic opposed universe of effect.
Yeah, super interesting. This is what I really took away from Walter's work too is okay, I've gone through all these years of education or whatever, and yeah, it's something that's it's a little bit complicated, but it's fairly simple to understand. And yeah, why we're not being explained this in grade 6 science class or whatever is
Right.
beyond me.
The simple of it makes it hard to explain,
Right.
because science is so complex. They did fire up the Large Hadron Collider this weekend, or this past day or two, to the highest level yet, and it's just, particle physicists have created a strange universe, and it's very hard to understand without. And even if you take 100 years to really study it, you still really don't come away with a true understanding.
Yeah, that's the other thing my wife told me. The Pope's coming and they're sending particles through a portal. I was like, of course, and Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll get sucked into the portal, and that'll be the end of them.
God, I can only hope. Yeah, so it's like whenever I hear anything like that, particles, portal, Georgia Guidestones, the Pope's coming, something's going on, buddy. I don't know what's going on, but I got to
Yeah,
pay a little more attention.
maybe the Large Hadron Collider was the actual cause of the explosion at the Georgia Guidestones.
And that's the portal. Who knows?
Q's in charge.
He was in charge. Oh my God. Too funny.
I
Yeah.
don't. Okay, back to the slide.
All
Sorry.
right, here we go. Yeah. Let's see here. So do you want to say anything about these graphs here? That's basically explaining what you're talking about.
Yeah, you've got dual opposed motion, which begins both at the cathode and the anode. So where the sun is in the lower left picture, the anode is the sun in the center at the equator. And so your hemispheres are your left and right. You think of that as nostrils in the human body. You know, that point of reversal is the anode, where the maximum compression of the wave takes place, and then it's reversed and the heat is given off at the equator, which could be the mouth. So that in any animal, in any star, in any binary system, you have compression and expansion, which the compression is one, which are basically two positive conditions of mother and father electricity inwinding the cold of space to a point of compression, to a high volume from a large volume into a smaller volume. And so this also gives the deriving of the saying that Walter used: the cube is the sphere compressed, and the sphere is the cube. The sphere is the cube compressed, and the cube is the sphere expanded, basically. So those are your two conditions of matter: is the vacuous expansion of large volume, which is compressed into a high pressure incandescence of smaller volume. And then at the equator of every sun, of every body, that smaller volume is interchanged back into the vacuous blackness from which it came. And that's the rhythmic balanced interchange between all pairs of father-mother opposites, which even the breathing cycle itself is a father-mother compression and then a release of that compression into expansion.
Yeah, I love this stuff. 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
That's why Dr. Russell said that you could count. If you could count to 9, you can explain and you can understand the universe.
Yeah.
Because it's 4 pairs. So you're +1 and +1 on each side. You're +2 and +2. More integration, more complexity, higher incandescence. Once you reach +4, you're at maximum incandescence is born, and that's the maximum inwinding of the wave. It's the maximum inhalation of your breath. You know, so it's the maximum of the heartbeat, and then an equal and opposite, which is at the equator at 90 degrees, takes place. So the compression is at 90 degrees to expansion. And there's, again, your wave cycle process.
I have a few more just images of his graphs.
Okay.
Different stuff. It might help to explain some of this. I should have put his periodic table up here, actually. Now that would have helped explain things.
No worries. Yeah, this is, again, cathode and anode. The compression of anode and the expansion of cathode. The thermodynamic series, and you have your convex and
It's not the best slide, actually.
convex and concave lenses all add their.
Yeah, maybe this will help. I got this one too. Waves.
Yeah, and your radar divided lenses, again, are, you know, some people say that these charts helped the US Army to come up with radar.
Mm.
That's an interesting thing, because a lot of these were drawn and were available in his Universal One, but some of these were later available. This was in 1959. He got more detailed And he felt he should give these charts some updates and higher definition. But you can see the concave and convex, and that's your wave intersections, forever creating radar divided lenses. So again, the lens is an optic. Okay, so the basic understanding at the higher level of Russell's science is that this is an optical universe, and it's a mind wave universe, and that the mind uses optics, if you will, optical waves.
I was sitting here over in the corner.
Yep.
There you are. Is that
So you
better?
have, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. Sorry.
And this is basically like almost like a subsection of the eyeball itself. There are lenses within the eye as well that help you to make sense of an optical universe. And again, the light in Russell's triality is you have divided light, which is the light wave spectrum of red and blue lights of creation. And then you have the centering white light, which is the pure universe of mind, the causal universe, which cannot be experienced other than in a state of death, because really it would fry you to experience that. That's why Paul on the road went blind from his experience. That's why many accounts of illumination talk of blindness, because the electrical short circuit between the hemispheres of the brain produces a flash of light so intense that the author of the Bhagavad Gita says it appears as to be like 1,000,000 suns in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that light is consciousness of the purest form and highest form. And we can only experience that in degrees, based on what we're ready to experience of it. Walter was given, he said, a thimbleful of an ocean of knowledge. And so, but that was through even 39 days. But the point being is that we can all experience that. It's the flash of light, the light bulb that brings to man the ideas that he then must use these two strong arms to build the body for those ideas. But it's all optical in the end, because we're dealing with optics and light in the way there's there's some great work on light. Honestly, there's more to be said about this, of course, but there's so many great people you could study who brought more further preponderances, ponderings, I should say, on the nature of light and what it is. And Goethe, for example, and there's others, light through a prism, take a look at that sometime. The light of a projector. Why is the screen of a movie theater white?
Mm-hmm.
And why does it take frames to produce an image? And what is the frame rate of the universe? These are the kinds of things, if we ask the optical questions, we can begin to understand the true nature of the universe is an optical one. And how do optics repeat? Holographically,
Mm-hmm.
and also fractally. You could almost say that holograms and fractals are synonymous in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because each is seated within the other, but it's all optics, because there's a frame rate to the universe, and even to our minds, to our own eyeballs, have a certain frame rate. 30 frames a second appears to be a motion picture to us. So what is the frame rate of nature? Now, these are the kinds of questions we can ask to further ponder what is actually going on behind nature and behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so fascinating. Yeah, exactly. The optical mind wave universe, like all is mind. And then there's this, what we're living in, which there's a lot of different theories, but yes, the holographic fractal, I guess it's like an image. It's like we're like the projected image of the God mind or whatever.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating.
And to Russell, the projectors are, the white light is the progenitor. It's the prime actuality, the undivided. And that's where your power source is at 90 degrees to all motion, right? So when that is projected, it's projected through the inert gases, which are the recorders of all motion, the master tones of the elements, Dr. Russell called them. And he was a musician. He understood that tonality is akin to projection, is akin to the inert gases. He didn't see the major keys on a piano as being something separate of the elements. It's all intertwined. Just like the senses aren't 5 different senses, it's one sense that does 5 different things. And so you start to really unify your own understanding of the universe by understanding how nature projects its myriad of images onto the screen of space, which fulfills the will of the creative mind behind it. And that's really what we have to deal with, is understanding that this is all a projection. Yes, it's a dualism. Yes, but the cause of it is the other. Add that together and you get 3. Cause and effect is 3. The effect is always 2, but the cause is always 1, and that creates the 3, which is the magic number, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. Why is 3 always considered? And then 3 times 3 is 9, which is the full octave, full 9 octaves of matter in its course from a space gas to plutonium and then back again. And it's all centered by the master keys, or the master elements, which are the inert gases. And the inert gases are closer to that single line of the equator. And that's why that at all equators, at all planes of all cubes, is this white light. In fact, it's omnipresent, but it does basically, when it projects, it compresses and expands, and compresses from itself and expands back to itself. It's the ultimate boundary and the ultimate power source simultaneously. So that's again, in the Divine Iliad, Russell says the creator spoke to him that all motion is centered by me and bounded by me. So that's the cube bounding all motion, and the sphere, which centers that same motion. And that's your process of creation. So that's why the cube and the sphere are the sole working tools of creation, because that's the 2 expressions of this divided universe from one sequence to the next.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of like the compass and the square.
Mhm.
That you're talking about that, right? With the Freemasonry, the compass and the square. It's like the physical and the spiritual.
And in alchemy, it was the circle and the square, right? And so when you 3-dimensionalize alchemy, you get a cube and a sphere, which is Walter Russell science. So that's why I've called it in the past, in interviews from the past, 3D hermeticism, or 3-dimensional alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, again, you have your dualism, but you have a center point, which makes it 3. And what is the Vesica Pisces? But, you have your circle, or your female, and then your square and your male. But in the center is the Savior child inside the Vesica Pisces, which is what? A combination of the hemispheres, which is exactly what many higher level musicians are able to do, is think with both sides of their brain simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Because to create and still be able to play, you have to logically and reasonably work out through technique, is left brain in a sense, and right brain is creative. So you're literally using both sides of the brain, and it's what centers that makes both sides being used at once possible in the first place. So to the greater degree that you realize the oneness of that cycle of hemispheres, is to the degree that you can put the power or find the zone, as they say, right? And amplify that, increase the voltage in your actual technique, playing style, whatever it is, sports, martial arts. Bruce Lee was one such example who was a zone fighter. He and there's many countless examples, from poets to painters to philosophers to sculptors. All kinds of people have been able to access that, and truly your works of art and your productions and your creative abilities excel when you use both sides of the brain simultaneously.
Hmm. That's actually what's really neat about martial arts, is like you can see that in like real time, whereas like the painter, the sculptor, the musician's playing, but then he like, if he's not in the zone, he can kind of set it down and take 5 or whatever. But with the martial arts, it's like you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna not be in the zone for a minute, because that's when you get kind of knocked out or
Right. And
whatever,
if you,
right?
proof of that is if you take the mind away from any one of those things we just named, what happens?
Nothing.
How can there be a zone? How can anybody do anything extraordinary with their body if their mind isn't the thing commanding it to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And you got your dualism in your body, but where's the mind? And if the mind is removed from the body, what do we call that person? A vegetable.
Yeah. It's a little
I mean,
insulting
so
to
what's the
vegetables.
real power source? Is it the body or is it the mind?
Yeah.
You see, again, you take the power source away, you still have a body, but what does it do? Just lay there and shit itself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing there. If you remove the mind, you have a vegetative state.
Mm-hmm.
So the proof that the mind is the source of power and should never be overlooked is right there. And again, it's a triality, which that puts the mind at the center of the motion. You command matter and you make it obey your command. And that's what the great creators do. They're able to, crystallize their thought and create bodies purposefully that, then they share with the world and alter its course and destiny. It's really amazing.
Very much is. Yeah. It's like, yeah, go on a tangent, but yeah. That's how we can know like our bodies are like vehicles, right? It's like our bodies are these vehicles that we drive with the mind, which is not just the brain. The mind is like a holistic thing, really.
Right.
Really like an energy field that is kind of controlling these things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the body too, without a body, the mind isn't necessarily a vegetable. It just doesn't exist. So the body is the extension, as you said, the vehicle which allows the mind to do these extraordinary things, because you need a body. So you should definitely keep a high regard for the body, its state, its health, its purpose, keeping it exercised, keeping it well oiled, fed, nourished, cared for, groomed, and the body really is the ultimate mirror to what is going on in the mind. We talked about this before, but you look at the person's surroundings, you want to know something about what's going on in their mind, just look at their surroundings. And so those who clean and organize their surroundings are actually cleaning up their own mind. It's much easier to clean your house and keep it clean and maintain it than it is to clean it once every 3 years and expect to have any order. So, they may decry OCD, but there is a point to order that. There's many volumes written about feng shui, which is the Eastern experience and teachings of order, but there's also a Western model of order, which you can see in the way the military does its wiring of naval vessels or airplanes. There is military grade wiring, which I was fortunate enough to have somebody teach me about when I worked for a company that installed sound systems. And it's fascinating because the higher the order, the more functionality and the easier to maintain and the easier to troubleshoot something. So you get a body that's out of order, man. Good luck trying to troubleshoot that. It's going to be a myriad of things that are dysfunctional and out of place, and everything from hoarding to all kinds of disorganization occurs. And if you're not organized, it's going to take you longer to find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
All that time spent, you spend 8 hours cleaning your house because it's so disorganized, or you can spend 10 minutes cleaning it because you've kept it clean. And that 10 minutes is just once every few days, and you keep and maintain order. It's much less work to keep it maintained than it is to completely clean up something from scratch and start,
Even with like my children having their toys be put away and in a spot so that they can find them and take it out and use them, right? And then, like, they're creating all this Lego stuff, but it's like, if the Lego isn't put away and they're trying to bring out their blocks or their little farm toys or whatever, it's their quality of play isn't as good as well, right?
Right. Because now you got 10 things mixed together and can't make heads or tails of any of it. And that's what science has done to our universe.
Right.
They have completely made it chaotic and are trying to explain it through all these disparate parts that don't match, don't add up, don't equate, do not make any sense except to 0.0001% of the string theorists who have gone into the world of mathematics to explain a universe that's dying of entropic heat death. That's the kind of explanations that leave you with such bizarre theories that Dr. Russell said the moon might as well be made of green cheese. And this is exactly why we should question these things and this large Hadron Collider, billions, trillions of dollars for that, which is just banging particles together at a super high speed. And how much energy did it take to launch that little thing? They might as well bang their heads together, because they probably get closer to an explanation of the universe doing that than they will smashing protons together at incredibly high speeds.
Oh.
That's the lie of particle physics. And it's so full of hubris, man, that it's going to take centuries for them to admit they were wrong, unless they're shown by experiment something that changes their mind, which, don't rule that out, because that's coming at some point in the future.
NASA has 500 or 600 million dollars a day budget or something, and it's like, what's going on with all this money?
Yeah,
Hadron colliders and
yeah.
Don't get me
started. I mean, then
that.
you have your old new age fringe that they're trying to open portals to other dimensions, which, I've been putting my presentation together on dimensions. Dispelling Dimensional Madness should be coming out.
Sweet.
I'm not rushing, man. I'm just taking my time, but it's going to be a little bit yet, but I'm just compiling notes and taking some good examples off the net to use to show people why this whole idea of dimensions needs to be completely expunged and rejected and rethought. But we'll get down to that at some point down the road.
Yeah, well, I'm working on projects too, and it's like I was trying to do a short project on like archetypal possession, show all these wackos out there running around. And then I was like, okay, well, then I got to explain archetypes. And then I'm like going back to like Jung's theories of, the topographical model of the psyche and on and on. It's like, oh man, started with something simple and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. So I've been trying to put that together for a few months now, really.
And that's, what are you doing? You're taking chaos and you're organizing it. And you when you come along these great minds like Jung and like Russell, and they're very highly organized. That's the first thing you start to notice, is that organization creates systems. Okay, so there's this complex systems theory, which the more complex something gets, it becomes more unstable. But then there's this more natural scientific view of maybe complexity is a result of higher organization, not the other way around, where, complexity it comes out of simplicity. In one sense, that might be true, but in another, it's to say that, the more complex the system is, then it should be more highly organized and it should function better. And so Russell's model of the universe really is the understanding of how complexity functions so well versus the scientific model that, complexity is a result of chaos, which eventually destroys itself to a more simple dynamic. So we have yet to see, but there's lots of things that can come out of, the studies of, like you're doing, the higher ordered minds. Because to have a higher ordered mind, you have to think very intentionally. You don't think accidentally. They can't afford that anymore. That time of tomorrow's a good day, yesterday's a bad day. You know what? You really command each day to fulfill an organized mission and goal, which allows you to accomplish much more in that day because you're ordering your day. You're organized and order it purposefully. And you don't sit back on the sidelines and just go, oh, damn it, this thing happened to me, so now my whole day's screwed. There's a lot of people like that, but it can be overcome. You can be more highly organized and act purposefully. And when these little obstacles befall you, you don't look at them as obstacles, you look at them as opportunities to even do more of an organizing effort. So from higher organization comes higher complexity, and from that also comes a higher creative ability.
Yeah, this organizing of Jung. I'm trying to organize his stuff because he's got so many volumes, and I'm just trying to pick like the cream of the crop to make it so it's easy to understand and so people can go through it in like a stepwise way. Just have a, and then you deepens your understanding, right?
Right.
Rather than
And if you look at that scientific chart, what you're doing is using both hemispheres of your brain to wind up the vacuity, which is the massive volume of Jungian work, into an anode, a compressed point of space, which is Luke's mind focused on this presentation, becomes the sun, which then you give to the world to ponder its existence. What is all these factoids and all these things you're putting together, these different bullet points and objectives that your outline is calling for, to create this body of work that is going to explain what it is that your idea initially. So you're building this, you're taking that vacuity, which is the mass amount of thought and different options that you can take and pull from, and creating a body, which is a video series, whatever it is you're going to do, interview, video, and it's going to be a presentation that is its own sun in a way. So that very process is the process of creation, and
so you compress it and then it'll expand out again
to the world,
right?
Or to whoever watches it.
It's interesting, like we're talking about creating bodies, this holographic mind wave universe. It's like, like we are the painting of the creator, right?
Sure.
It's like we have that spirit, and then our body is like that thought put into a body, as he explains it, right?
And when somebody watches your presentation, they're going to take that expanded presentation, compress it into their own mind's eye, and then they will expand out by the thinking about it. So it's again another compression and expansion sequence. So what are you doing when you listen, right? What are your ears, the cochlea of your ears, what are they? Spirals. And they spiral in to the eardrum, right? Which then translates that little wave that's compressed from an expanded condition to a very small condition. And then it electroneurologically transmits sound that your brain decodes as sound through waves, right? It's a mind wave universe. Same with the eyes. The eyes interpret waves optically and coalesce those waves and make them shine on the screen of the visual cortex, which colorizes it, turns it right side up, and three-dimensionalizes it in your mind. So, and the whole process is there. It happens every day in all the things in our conversations, everything we say, everything we do. Rhythmic balanced interchange and the reversal of sequential interchangings, in this electrochemical stew we call life in outer space. It's all there for us to see. But we all follow that same creative process, as does the creator in its own creative processes, which we call nature.
Yeah, it's like a mirroring. It's like we're mirroring, yeah, that of the macrocosm, right?
Sure.
Pretty cool. I just have one more slide that's the science based. And then I don't know if this is going to help people explain similar stuff, right? Yeah. I don't know if that's going to help. I think we kind of explained it as much as we can in this presentation. Do you have anything to say about that? I guess we have all this right angled.
Yeah, this is your polarization and fusion. Your fission is the opposite. It's dividing and depolarization. So again, this is optical. When you say that these are your, read the bottom, 9 pairs of gravity poles. So gravity in Russell science is stillness, but it centers each octave, and all lenses and effects are centered by the poles of gravity, which are basically 3, a north, a south, and a centering block wall, you could say, between those. But this is toward fusion. So the vacuity is at the edges of the square. As you move to the center, that vacuity becomes more compressed until it becomes incandescent. And then you have an opposite motion that extends at 90 degrees to this motion, which is at the equator, which is the opposite, giving off, and through fission and depolarization returns back to stillness.
Cool. Like this is just what you were saying, buddy, about making the day. Today I will make such a day. Today I rise before the sun, ready to cast rays upon the world stage. I will make this day a day to remember. Despite my failings of days gone before, today I stand anew, ready to paint the world with colors vibrant and alive. Today I am remade in the image of health, power, and purpose, for that is my truth, to be alive and ready to live another day in the moving picture universe. I will paint today a masterpiece upon the canvas of my mind.
Written from an inspired moment.
Yeah. Well, I was after doing a few of our interviews, I didn't listen to like maybe the third or fourth one that we did. And I was like, I was having one of these, like, you know, like the worm tongue from like Lord of the Rings, where it's just like, you know, the worm tongue was in my ear. You're wasting Matt's time. You don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was like, and then I was like, oh, whatever. I'm still going to do this. And the next slide I was making was that one. And then I was just, and I wasn't sure if I was going to put that slide in. And then I was like reading it, and I was like writing it out, handwriting it out. And then I was like typing it on the computer. And I was like, this is exactly, I was like, no, it was just like right away. It sort of like reinvigorated me to keep doing this project. It was funny. That's exactly the point of that statement. You know, it's like, no, today I'm just going to do it regardless of the days gone past. And, you know, and then I went back and listened to our interview, and I was like, oh, this is excellent, actually. But it's like you have that creeping self-doubt and that worm tongue in there that's, you know.
Sure. And self-doubt is an interesting thing, because I suffered greatly from that when I was younger. And being younger, I mean, up until the age of almost 30, 39, 40 years old. And then when I really started to get into the Russell teachings, it's like you begin to realize that self-doubt it's not as big a specter as a lot of people think it is, although it can cause a barrier between you and accomplishment. But it's more of a, when you don't really understand that you have such an incredible power, Okay, that's probably the reason self-doubt has such a foothold and a stronghold in people, because they don't realize that their creative power is based on the tenets of the realization that you have it to begin with. And so when you feel powerless, of course, you're going to have more doubts. Well, I can't get that done. There's no way I can do that. I can't do that because that isn't like that. And I don't have this and I can't do that. Well, the amount of energy it takes to negatively reinforce yourself through doubting is more intense than actually just doing what you say you can't do, getting it done, and then realizing, oh my God, I could have done that years ago, but I didn't do it because I was too busy spending all that energy that I could have been doing what I thought I couldn't do years ago. And because I spent all that energy, I never had the energy to actually do it. We tie ourselves up and then ask why we can't get off the floor. I mean, we're the people tying the knots. We're not getting tied up by the Pope or by the Georgia Guidestone builder. We're tying ourselves up and going, I can't do this. Why did we do that? It's sort of, that's when you get to that point of why, and you think about why long enough, you got to get a little pissed off too. I think that helps, real true righteous anger for the sake of the self is something that a lot of people could really benefit from. And I don't mean smash your art set against the wall because you can't paint a picture. I'm talking about untying yourself enough to get your paint out and actually try to paint. As you said, that nagging voice in the head, arrest that MFer and put him in jail and say, you're out of my head until I decide to let you back into it. I don't have room or time for you. You're gonna do what I say from now on, instead of me listening to you and never getting anything done except the doubting. But yeah, it's all part and parcel to the unleashing the self onto the world stage, which is your own stage. You make the stage. All the world's a stage, right? But really, we each have our own stage, and what we give to our audiences, if we have one. If you don't, build one and they will come. If you build it, which is your creative projects, they will come, meaning those who are interested enough, who share that love of the wave for what you've created, a wave, right? A body is a waveform. If they resonate with that waveform, you're going to build an audience. And if you look at how many people resonate with Britney Spears and resonate with R. Kelly and resonate with pop music and pop culture, and there's hundreds of millions of people. What did I say? If I put a video on YouTube, alligator eats baby, I'd have 30 million views in the first day, right? But why would I want that audience? I'd rather do an interview with someone who gets 10 views and know that it might help one person out of 10 than to try to help 130 million people who wouldn't give a damn you were trying to help them in the first place. So again, it's quality over quantity, really. It's putting the doubting Thomas in his place and saying, get the hell out of my way. I've got too much work to do to listen to you anymore. And there's a certain confidence and a certain leveling up that comes from that courageous way to approach creativity and your own personal valuable time, that you just don't have the time to afford a voice like that to have free housing in your head. At least up the rent for it, make it pay if it's going to cause you to lose time and creative ability. It's a process, and it comes, it can be a very long process for some people, and for others it can come by the time they're 2 or 3 years old. It just depends on, I think, a lot to do with perhaps past lives, perhaps where a person's raised, the environment, Maslow's hierarchy.
Schools, right? The parenting in the schools, it's like that voice is like compiling all of the doubters from your entire life into like one little worm tongue in the ear.
Yeah. And then fire his ass. You might not, again, it comes down, there's that saying, beware casting out your demons, because you may be casting out the very best part of yourself. I'm not saying cast out that which might assist you, but a nagging voice in your head is just a nuance. You know, it's nothing says, there's no written law that says you have to tolerate a nagging voice any more than you would tolerate a person twerking in front of your children on in the streets, right? We won't go there, but I'll just say that you know, put it where it needs to go. Satan, get behind me, as it were.
Well,
Satan is really anything that limits you from discovering your true purpose and living your best self.
mhm,
Put it behind you, and if you need it, you know, if you got to, you know, break some balls or bust some ass, bring it forward.
mhm.
Use it when needed, but if it's a hindrance, put it behind you. Not ignore what the lesson is either. You know, maybe that doubt is coming from some psychological situation in the edible stage, eatable stages of youth, you know, but one way or another, you know, that might be where the Jungian presentation that you do could really help to explain what is the doubter in me. You know, that sounds like a podcast right there.
Well, that'll have to be one because of that's where the shadow comes from. It's
Mhm.
actually all the things that you've cast out. And it's the same with the Freudian id. The superego is actually the one that's censoring all that stuff, right? And then that's where this sort of shadow figure, I feel like, comes from. Tessarian
Mhm.
does great stuff with some of Freud's work,
Oh yeah,
bringing
fantastic.
that stuff up, which is, a lot of people don't know much about Freud anymore because of like the Jungian sort of split,
Mhm.
you know. But
For
that's
me,
a
a
whole.
lot of the self-doubt, you know, it's when I learned that material wasn't a roadblock. I was able to get things when I was younger, like a mixing board at 16 years old. I didn't have a car till I was 24, but I didn't give a damn about a car. I wanted music equipment. That was what I wanted. And I ended up understanding that if I wanted something, I could get it. If I wanted it bad enough, I would find a way to get it. And so there were the doubt for obtaining musical equipment wasn't really as strong as, let's say, doubt for obtaining a home or doubt for obtaining somebody to love, you know, a real true partner. So those things, you know, again, psychology should never be ignored. It should be embraced. But at some point, too, the crutch or the training wheels need to go. At some point, you need to learn to ride the bike and you need to learn to walk, you know,
Mhm.
and that's a lot of people will use crutches as a reason not to do something. Again, because they're more inclined to want to not progress than they are to progress. So again, courage, bravery, strategic decision making that benefits your life and helps fulfill your ambitions, your dreams, your goals, your plans, and long-term goals, things like that, all need to be taken into account. You know, it's a very incredible journey that we're all on, and really the only real true hindrance besides tyrannical government that I've experienced and have seen in others' lives, the greatest obstacle to anybody's happiness usually resides within themselves.
Well, and it's kind of like taking that first step, right? Like people kind of, they have this far goal in mind and it's so big and massive that they can't even take that first step. It's like this stepwise progression. And like I know a lot of people who were, like 10, 15 years ago, like I want to be self-sufficient and I want to have property and I want to grow my own food and this and that and
Mhm.
that. And then they're like, oh my God, that's such a massive task. And they're in the exact same point they were 10 or 15 years ago. Whereas like if you just take that one step, you got to go out, you got to go to work, you got to do this one step at a time, right?
Mhm.
And because they wanted it all now, they don't have any of it now.
Right.
And it's whereas like if I took that one step, it's like now I have a house, now I have a small garden, now I'm digging a fence for a bigger garden, you know what I mean? It's like a step by step thing. You just got to start with the small things, right? Get out your front door first.
Yeah. That's, I think, too, the benefit of the home study course the Russells wrote was really the process of creation laid out over 12 units. But one, you know, your passages that you read in any work of art, any work of literature, self-help, whatever it is, you know, there's certain things that stick out and you'll always remember. And one from the home study course in particular, which you can find at philosophy.org. In particular, if you take a step toward creating what you desire, the universe has to take a step toward its fulfillment.
Mhm.
So every step you take, the universe actually steps towards you. And again, in the wave cycle, that +1 to the anode, from the cathode to the anode, +1 is your concrete pad of your home. +2 are the joists and the walls and the beams. +3 are the drywall, the roof, and the doors and the windows. +4 is the furniture, the family, the wife and kids. You know, so if you're going to build a house, all those, but each step you take eventually gets to an anode, which is centered. You know, that's right here. That's your idea fulfilled in the physical manifestation we call the universe.
Mhm.
You know, it's no different with a podcast. It's no different with a presentation. You know, and sometimes it takes years, decades for some to crystallize that idea into a thought body. You know, but if it's worth doing it, then spend the time. Take 10, 20 years to do something. You know, the one thing I've learned is that the hardest thing to learn is patience. It's the greatest lesson for me. And they say that's patience is the greatest virtue. You've heard that, I'm sure. Why? Because people are, especially in this kind of world where if you're hedonistic, you're not going to wait more than a day to get what you want. You know, if you're that kind of person.
Delayed gratification. Right?
Yeah. Instant gratification is the enemy of true creativity.
Well, yeah, no one would learn to play guitar or do anything, right? You'd be
Yeah.
banging a couple sticks together, and that's as far as they get.
Yeah. If you don't woodshed, there ain't no point in even trying. You know?
I've got a project that I've started working on like 5 years ago, and it's
Mhm.
like still because I put some things in front of it and to learn, you know, some more technical stuff with computers and this and that. It's
Yeah.
like still there, but it's in the back of my mind, and it's actually, even though I haven't touched the project, because I'm upping all my skills with these other things, it's getting closer and closer and closer to coming into physical reality, right?
There you go.
And when it's done, it'll, you know, it's like you just don't put it away. You know, even though I haven't really worked on it, it's like it's still there waiting to be manifested.
Right. And despite your body existing in the duality, if that third missing strand of mine isn't there to push the body to complete the project, there's no finished product.
Mhm.
There's a zero. There's nothing. You know, and if you don't from the mind cause the motion of the dualistic nature of the body to fulfill the work that's in the mind in the physical universe, you know, an idea that is not born in the physical universe is stillborn. It doesn't exist. You know,
Yeah,
and
well,
that's the real, isn't that the crux for most people? It's
yeah.
not that they don't have ideas, it's that they don't build the body to house the idea. And so they think the universe doesn't like them for some reason when it's self-inflicted. Genius is self-bestowed, mediocrity is self-inflicted, as the good doctor said.
As a good doctor said. Yeah. Well, and you know, what's interesting is when you take that leap of faith, take that first step, like you say, like the universe has to meet you halfway. It's like those
It has no
unseen
choice.
forces come to your aid, right?
Right. Be
And you
bold.
know, I was talking about this with a friend of mine. His friend who greatly influenced him, that he passed away, but like he would step on like, oh, I'm looking for a book, and he'd be like, boom, this one, like off the shelf of the library, and it would be like the perfect book for the perfect time. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's kind of like that, following those synchronicities too. It's like, what is that? That's the universe coming to your aid, right? And it's you taking that leap of faith.
Yep. And it has no choice but to. That's
Right.
the interesting thing. If you drive a nail into wood, does the wood have a choice to accept or reject the nail?
Right.
I mean, if a tree could choose, do you think it would want to be a house?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe.
that's just, the universe is there to fulfill. But the problem with fulfillment is this little thing, it's a 4-letter word, work,
Yeah.
you know? Oh, you mean I gotta work to make that? Nah, not interested. I'll just go over here where I can buy something that's already made.
Yeah.
Like, how about Happy Meals? How about quarter pounders with cheese? How about McDonald's and Burger King and Arby's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and I could go down the road. There's hundreds of them that you can get like that, because that way you don't have to actually get in your kitchen, get out a frying pan, do the work to make yourself dinner.
Mm.
So you can get as sick as you want eating this garbage. These garbage for 10,000 years of garbage. And it's all there because people don't want to work. So what is the natural inclination of people who don't want to work? They go to what's fast, what's immediate, again, immediate instant gratification.
Well, it's like the easiest road, right? It's like, oh, I can just go to this job that's easy, and then I can just buy this stuff. So that's
Yep.
easier for me rather than like, I know a lot of people stuck in their jobs. Like, look at this pandemic or whatever. People are like, oh, but my mortgage and my this and my that. It's like, you could go and do anything. You don't need this job. It's a
Yeah.
million jobs that you could
Yep.
have, right? But there's like, but that's not as easy as what I already have here, and I'm used to it. And yeah, it's
You know
interesting.
what
It's like a struggle.
yeah, exactly. What the tale of instant gratification is?
Let's hear it.
Um, a lack of quality.
Right.
It's quantity, but no quality.
Well,
Work equals quality. The tale of work is quality. The tale of instant gratification and gimme, gimme, gimme is quantity. And there's no quality in quantity. And the mob is a quantity, but an individual is a quality.
mhm. Well, it's the same with like my property and all this. Like, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's like a slow working process, like my house is half painted. Well, if I don't get out and keep painting it, it'll stay half painted forever. My fence is half built. I ran out of fencing. Well, it's like, I got to keep going. I put the posts in, I cleared the land. It's just like every little process, right? It's work. What do you say? It's like one part inspiration, 90 parts perspiration. What's that?
1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. That was Thomas Edison. And he's right. That's what genius is, as he said it. And if we're going to be on the path to genius, which I would say, when I decided to start walking that path, at some point I want to be on that path. What did I realize was the first rule of leaving mediocrity toward the genius level? And that word again is work. Work, 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 work. But not so much that you lose, you got to be able to rest in between your work sequences as well, because rest is where you get the idea for what work you're going to be doing in the future. But you don't need that much rest to figure out what your ideas are. You just need, that's where your inspiration comes in. You rest 1% of the time to get your ideas to work 99% of the time to build your ideas. That's kind of how that breaks down for me anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no end of work to be done.
And that's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
It's great to finish the fence though, isn't it? And to sit back and have a cold one, and you and the wife look at the fence and go, look at that. That looks nice. It's done.
Well, I was listening to
It's
someone
an
a while ago. It's like,
accomplishment is wonderful.
yeah, it's like, look at what you've accomplished. If you don't stand back and look at what you've accomplished, it's like, then that's the appreciation. And kind of see like, how far have you come down that road? If I look back way down the road where I came from, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
I would just be like drunk somewhere on a mattress on a floor or something if I didn't do any work to get to where I am today.
And once you do the work, you can always look at something and go, you know what? If a tornado takes it away or something, God forbid, happens, in the back of your head, I did the work to make what I lost happen. I can do that work again, and I can do it even better and more efficiently now.
Mhm.
So it's not that big a deal. Loss doesn't become an end all be all. It just, again, mediocrity sees obstacles, genius sees opportunities.
Well, I was thinking about Walter Russell when he lost all his money. He said, I'll
Right.
just make it back.
Yep.
Whereas some of these people, because of the stock market stuff going on and like GameStop and crypto going down, like people are killing themselves.
Yeah.
They should think, no, I could just make that again,
Yep.
but
Yep.
it's too bad.
It all depends on what your living philosophy is. And we all have a philosophy of some sort or another. People may not be aware that they believe in somebody else's philosophy, but they're certainly living it. And the people in the streets marching are living somebody's philosophy. And it may be an anti-philosophy, if you want to really get into the terms of the word, a hatred of wisdom but it's still, in a sense, it's either an anti or a pro philosophy or somewhere in between. But one is productive, produces beauty, creates aesthetics, which is a study in itself. The other produces detrimental effects, which basically pull society down toward dissolution. And that happens to be, at least the way the media presents it, the majority of the human race. But in all reality, it's actually more like 0.001%.
Yeah.
Just so amplified that we think it's happening everywhere. Well, it's not happening where I live.
No,
And 99% of the rural towns in America, I can tell you that's not taking place here.
no.
It's only in a few places, the blue places of the world, if you want to get right down to it, that these kinds of things happen. And what does that tell you?
Well, it has to
Perhaps
happen in a major city where there's lots of
Yep.
optics, right?
Yep. Lots of, a city is the countryside compressed. You take the countryside and you wind it up, you get a city. You unwind the city, you get the countryside. That's the Cuban sphere. So the countryside is the cube compressed, and the city is the countryside expanded, right? So without a countryside, there'd be no city.
Mhm.
Because where does all the food come from? Where does all the timber and the concrete mixing and all the different things that go into making a city come from? The copper for the street lights and the stoplights and the metal for the stop signs and the building and the beams and the high rises and all that comes from the countryside. So out in the expanse of wilderness and nature, when you compress nature in the wilderness, you get a city.
Mhm. But it's just
'Cause
stopped that rhythmic interchange. It's just
Right.
stopped at this point, right?
And what happens if the countryside stops giving to the city? How many times have you heard of people fleeing the countryside
Yeah.
when civilization collapses? Or is it the opposite? Do they flee the cities for the safety and safe harbor of the countryside?
I've
Well,
seen it.
we know the answer, right?
I've seen it in the past few years with people coming out here, fleeing the city because they can work remotely now and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Because countrysides don't collapse, only the compressed condition is what is at risk, because that is dependent on that which gives it form to exist in the first place.
It's like even during the Depression, everyone left the cities to go work in the country, right? Hop the trains and go to a small town and work from farm to farm or wherever, right?
And when Rome fell, what did they sack? The countryside? No, they moved right into the city. That's where the centers of power are, or so they're perceived to be.
Mhm.
But I say it's the opposite. I think, again, it's a dualistic notion, but centering it all are the minds of the people that inhabit either the countryside or the city. The way the mind perceives creates the conditions of either and both. But again, that's more something we can get into down the road. But I think it's healthy to know that the condition of the mind is responsible for the condition of the product, which is the city, the civilization, the institution, the organization, whatever those be, governments and organization, what is the mindset of the organization? Is it tyrannical? So that if it is, the effects of the policies of it are going to be tyrannical. But it's not the fault of the bodies that inhabit those positions of government. It's the fault of the minds that inhabit the bodies, because that anti-psychological or anti-growth, like they're against growth itself, or really anti-progressive, if you really want to get down to it. Dissolution is anti-progress. It's anti-natural. And so therein lies your psychological dysfunction, is that a lot of these blue mindsets, if you will, and the reason it's blue, and the reason I wear blue blockers is because blue is radioactive. It's not good to absorb a lot of blue rays, which can also cause this, which is called a sunburn. Aha. Yeah.
Gotta
The
get your sun
blue
too.
is so good for you, right?
Yeah.
In small amounts, right? It's just part of the color spectrum, but too much can burn you.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that about blue being radioactive.
Well, it's on that side of the spectrum.
Right.
But that's why in my Knowing the Creator 101, when I say that, raising your vibrations, you're moving into that higher, that more destructive state called radioactivity, which is why plutonium and uranium, when they work on that, when they were creating the cores for the explosive radioactive bombs that they dropped, there was a flash of light, and it was a blue light, and it was so damaging that it, you could look at the history of, there's a really great movie, I can't remember, Fat Man and Little Boy, I think it was called. Robert Redford might have been in it, I'm not sure, but it was a very intense movie about how several people died because they got the core too close to a conductive material that caused this flash. And that flash, everybody in that lab was dead within 2 weeks. But that's just a conspiracy theory if you don't think there's such a thing as nuclear or uranium-235, or that, nuclear reactors are just giant free energy machines with no consequential things, Or you look at Fukushima and go, why are all those water tanks there if there's nothing really dangerous about nukes? So again, it's just, perspective makes a big difference on outcome.
Like, I think some of the uranium from the bombs came from this island. Actually, it's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
They mined uranium on this island and used it for the atomic bomb. When I heard that, I was like, what? So weird. Why do I live here? Very odd.
These elements, as Dr. Russell said, have their purpose deep underground. They create the humus that rises to the surface, which gives the soil its composition and ability to break things down. But concentrating it and bringing it to the surface and then lighting it on fire is just not a very good thing to do. So he wrote Atomic Suicide to reflect that, mistake of human thinking. And anyways, long of the short, the mind is really, bodies didn't dig that stuff up on their own. The mind decided to use the bodies to dig that stuff up. So again, really the mind is the progenitor of all things good and evil. It's all due to free will, and the use of the mind is the power source that's at 90 degrees to this body of motion. And so the decision is carried out through the wave vibration of the hemispheres. It moves through the nerves and makes the fingers do its will. Now you can take a hammer and you can crush a man's skull, or you can build a house with it, but it's not the hammer's fault if you destroy a man's skull with it, any more than it's a gun's fault that some fool shoots up a July 4th parade. So banning the object, an inanimate object that has no mind of its own other than reflecting that which built it, which was the mind of the man that created it. Maybe the guy's name was Hammer. I don't know. Whoever invented the hammer, it's a hell of a great tool. I've used it many times. but never to do things like smash a person's skull in.
It's a lot better than a rock.
Yeah,
Funny.
it's a little, it fits the hand better. It's easier to wield and coordinate a good attack with, you know.
Well, I saw a meme, I guess it was a few weeks ago, and it was when Cain slew Abel,
Mhm.
God didn't ban rocks. He
Yeah,
blamed Cain.
yeah,
It's pretty
exactly.
funny.
Since when does banning an object stop a man from using the mind is a terrible thing. It can be if it's used incorrectly. Again, back to the Russell Home Study course, the sex urge, misuse of the sex urge, which is the urge of nature to multiply its pairs of opposites. It's what creates more than one apple. It's what creates more than one human. It's what creates more than one deer, more than one duck, more than one fish, more than one insect, more than one cloud, more than one sun, more than one solar system, more than one cell. Procreation is the urge of sexual intercourse between opposite conditions, which are always centered by the mind. The mind is the desire which makes the two want to come together, right? If man and woman did not unify, there would be no child,
Mhm.
period. End of story. So we do live in a binary universe. I'm sorry to say you can't be non-binary either, because at that point you're setting up two conditions, one of male and female versus non-binary, which makes what? Two different ways, which is binary.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I saw that on a meme. I don't know who it was, but it was fantastic. I laughed so hard at that. It's just one of those little truisms that would make someone's head explode if they understood the concept of the
Well, again,
ridiculous stance they take. But
nature only makes sex pairs of opposites,
yeah,
because
exactly.
then that's how you create more sexed pairs of opposites.
Yep. And even a hermaphrodite has what? Both sex organs.
Yeah,
There's no such thing as a monopole in nature.
right. Yeah,
There's always a
exactly.
pole in space, at least somewhere out far enough that there's an interchange between that pole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's jump into a few more slides here.
Got it.
I think we can get through a few of these here. Come on. Well, look at this one. Do not limit your points of view lest your surveillances become fogged. Don't give any one source your full allegiance, lest you become easily manipulated. Broaden your horizon with discernment, not belief in a certain outcome. Invest in your own life before you invest in others. Do not be so overextended that you cannot recoil at a moment's notice. Do not be so involved in something that you cannot fathom other possibilities. It's very Bruce Lee, I feel like.
That sounds like it came from one of my writings on my blog post page.
It definitely did.
Yeah, that's just good advice. That again, sitting and thinking about things for so long, and then I have a love for creative writing, so I write a lot of things down, as much to remind myself, more even so than to really, the goal isn't necessarily to share with other people, but just to remind myself, hey, don't forget this. These things that you learn, I write these things down, and then I end up, oh, this make a great post, so I post it. And I'm just so happy to see at least one person in the world say, here's this reflected back at you. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually humbled, because it's all just little lessons that you learn as time goes on. That's what wisdom is. That's what philosophy is, the love of wisdom. And these wise things, this field of knowledge is fully existent. Just like we talked about, there's no knowledge in a library. The knowledge is in the minds of the men who wrote the words down. The words awaken in you the light of the realization that the minds that wrote those words down wish to transfer. Not everybody gets the author. Some get some of the author, some get all of the author, and some get somewhere in between. Some don't get it at all, you could say. So ultimately, that which is awakened in you already exists. We just have to wake up to the fact that it's there. Like, no one person can be fully 100% as conscious as the creator. they would instantaneously self-combust. The knowledge would be so incredibly beyond you that your body couldn't handle it. It can't be embodied. It's too big to be embodied in just one small thing like a single individual. That's why that knowledge has to be spread out over the entire universe, and why it's from the smallest part of matter to the largest supercluster in existence, which is the universe itself.
Mhm.
That is the power of this light of mind.
It's like can't even be described in its totality, right? Like it's like the
Right.
nameless.
And the humans that have encountered it, that write about it, call it illumination. They say they're illumined by it. It is an illumining. You're actually experiencing it. And I've had my own experiences of it. And I call them mini experiences, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is an existent thing. It's the least experienced experience on planet Earth, but nonetheless, it's been described over and over in so many different ways. It's a golden thread that weaves its way through many writings, many teachings. It started religions. It's not a religion when it's experienced, but it becomes a religion because other people who didn't experience it start writing their own things about it, and then it becomes a religion and completely 180 degrees against what it was meant to be. Yeah, the experience itself, that light is ultimately something that informs us over time if we're fortunate enough to experience it and process it in such a way that it can affect real change and real creative expression in you.
And allowing yourself to experience that stuff. I feel like there's so much blockages to not even allow that experience to take place, right?
Yeah, here's one blockage that takes you right out of the experience. That thing rings and all your inspiration just went out the window. And I think that could be too, in large part, why we're kind of in the situation we're in now, because there are so many distractions from inside of you. I think I said on an interview years ago, a couple different interviews, how much I like the N words, like inspiration, intuition. Are you into it? Right?
Mhm.
Are you in the spirit? Those N words are so important because everything that the senses can see, you know, vibrates all around us. But what's going on the inside is so overlooked so many times. And the way that the good mindful people of this universe, the great teachers, if you will, always bring you to study that inside space that is the least known, the least experienced, because
Exactly.
that's really the greatest power source, is what's within each of us. And those who realize that are what we call the geniuses.
It's that time contemplation, right? Sitting on your back porch or staring out the window, right? It's like you're giving yourself that time,
Mhm.
not checking Twitter or checking whatever. And
Yeah. And that's a binary process. You have the inward thinking. What do they call a person that just thinks inward all the time but never actually does anything with it? A daydreamer.
mhm,
Oh, he's just a daydreamer, just sits there staring out the window all day, but he never does anything. He doesn't work. He doesn't make dinner. He doesn't even wash his own clothes. His mom does all that. So, and then you got the guy that just works all the time and doesn't have any inner insight. And he becomes the tyrant. He's the hedonist, the guy that's all just my body, my pleasure. I need pleasure, 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 pleasure. That's all I live for. Control, pleasure. What are those people over there doing? They need to be in my group and think like the rest of my little blue minions. you know but then you got the minds like Walter Russell, when he advised the people in IBM how they could better their creative powers and ability to sell and do things like that in his lecture years. He said that has to be a balanced process. The inward direction of thinking must be balanced by the outward direction of action, and they must keep on the even keel with one another if it's going to be an effective relationship. Because too much inward is a daydreamer, too much outward is a tyrant. But the happy medium is a creative artist that inspires millions of others to be creative themselves.
I think that's where we are at now. We're so polarized. So, right. It's like, we're going to get, how far can we polarize these extremes? And then it's going to start snapping back. That's
Or
just
break
part of
apart.
it. Or break apart. Yeah.
Some things do go beyond the orbit because they become erratic. If a tire on your car is out of alignment and you
Right.
can feel it, and the damn thing will, eventually you'll lose the tire, the rim, and everything, right? And perhaps that might be best. And then we just stop the car, put a new tire on, and go on our merry way without the old tire.
I went on a huge trip down through the US, probably around 2012. And I bought this motorhome, but on the dualies, the inside tires were like a 1/4 inch smaller. He didn't put on, and so it's like a tire pop. I was like, all right, change the tire. Another tire pops. I went about 6,000 miles all the way down to Colorado and Arizona, New Mexico, and around and back up. But I was like, why are these tires always popping? And then the other tires were taking all the weight, so they're popping first, actually, and then eventually. This guy Fast Eddie down in Cortez, I think it's Colorado, right near New Mexico, right near Shiprock.
Right.
That giant volcano or whatever that froze in midair. Shiprock. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but Fast Eddie saved the day, and he's like, "This is what your problem is." Told me, he's like, "Normally I don't have time for this shit, but I can see you're in a bind. Help me out." But yeah, it's like that little bit, 1/4 inch, not.
It's a good thing you didn't run into Slow Eddie. You might still be stuck in Colorado.
That's right. Yeah, Fast Eddie was the man.
There it is. I mean, one imbalance and the whole damn thing goes to hell.
And it was like, yeah, and the whole thing every time, boom. A couple days later, boom, another tire. I was like, what is going on here? So
I hope you got your money back.
For imbalance. They're pretty cheap, these tires. You know what?
Okay.
Not too bad. $100 or something. I think Fast Eddie gave me a deal. His was only 60. Okay, let's jump in a few more slides. I think we can do it, buddy.
All righty.
7 centuries were consumed by man to reborn his world from the dark 7-century period of his last great fall. He has fallen further in 60 years than he rose in 7 centuries, and will soon disappear into oblivion. Oh, geez. And will disappear into oblivion soon unless he becomes sufficiently transformed by the renewing of his mind in time to prevent it.
Well, isn't that a stark warning? And 60 years was from 1900 to 1960, about the time that was written.
Got an extra 60 on top of that, eh?
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. Him and Leo felt so much that man had fallen so far. They basically looked at the 19th century as the highest peak of man, and from that point, prior to industrialization, like industrialization on a mass level, where it was popping up all over, the mills and the grinding wheel factories of just men becoming cogs in machines, which Spencer warned about, said would be the destruction of man if he didn't, and Alexis Carrel, renew his mind, right? So what is the renewal of mind really? And how does that happen? The renewal of mind is renewing a constant understanding of man's knowledge that mind is cause. When man is subjugated to the environment of a warehouse, a factory, and he becomes a cog in a machine, he's just a body performing like AI. There's a lot of AI humans that don't have chips in their heads. Artificial intelligence is not a renewal of the mind. It's an unrenewal, a non-renewal. And it can only do what is programmed for it to do. So I like to say I have in-I, and those I love and respect have in-I, which is natural intelligence. And that's how you combat. That's how you renew the mind is through natural intelligence. So get your NI on, get rid of the AI, and start your natural intelligent renewal. And the renewal, how do you renew yourself from a life in the city? You go on vacation, and where do you vacate to? Nature. Why do you go to nature? Because there's natural intelligence all around you. And all the AI, those rhythms of the AI become cleared out, moved out of the way. It's like you're driving a snowplow through your own head, and through your own heart by going out to nature and renewing the mind, which is God. The creator of nature is the creator of you also, to the degree that you realize it is. It's that consciousness that is the thousand sons of the mind. But it's that which causes all the effects of the dualistic motion universe. And being cognizant of it means you are centering yourself in the cause and commanding your body to renew that cause in your creative efforts in life. And it's fun to do whatever you need to do. Even upkeep of a home can be fun. The work doesn't seem like work anymore. When you renew your mind, you know that work is necessary. It becomes so just a part of life that it's as if, some people pay attention so hard to this concept of work that it's so unenjoyable. But when it becomes something you love and understand that it's just part of the human condition, that it's necessary to, upkeep a home or, put food on the table, then it becomes as important as air. Why would we think about whether we breathe in or out all day long? Oh, I better breathe. Oh, I better breathe out. Oh, I better inhale. I better exhale. I better inhale. I better exhale. But that's how we look at work. Some of us, but there's point that comes when you understand work is just, it's necessary, and it just becomes a thing you do. And so when you do it, it's like you're breathing. You don't even really notice it, but you know what the outcome is because you see the end goal and you know that it takes these actions to get there. You don't rake the leaves, they're not going to rake themselves. Prayer doesn't put food on the table.
Yeah.
And nor does it make you a better guitar player. So, it all comes down to work, and there's no charity in nature. If nature was full of charity, nothing would grow.
Well, I was telling my son this because we were singing the Big Rock Candy Mountain. And there's this one part where it's they hung the jerk that invented work. And both my kids are like, work? What's wrong with that? And then I was trying to explain to him. He's like, yeah, what's with that concept, right? And so I'm telling him, he's only 5, but I was like, like crows work. The ravens work. The sparrows work. Like the nests don't build themselves. They build them. They bring the food. And so it's like work is this natural thing. It's so funny. We're talking about this song and then we get into this big philosophical conversation about how work is natural. Like, he was working to ride his bike and learn how to ride his bike, and he's working to do this. It's pretty interesting, right? Like work is actually a natural state.
Absolutely.
Every living thing has to do it.
Nature has no dependence, only adherence. That which adheres to the natural law and the natural intelligence survives. That which doesn't dies. Who painted that or drew that? Is that a pencil sketch behind you there? With
This
the
here?
mountains? Yeah.
This, I don't know who painted it. It's over 100 years old.
Okay.
And it's from Japan.
I was just thinking if he wouldn't have done the work, it looks like a pencil drawing almost, but if he wouldn't have done the work, there'd be no picture, right?
It's really faded. It's actually on some type of I don't know what kind of paper or like an interweaving of something. And it's kind of it's pretty old. I've had it for a while and it's been quite faded over time.
Pretty cool looking.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, just an example of the mind didn't put the pencil to the paper or the pen or the paintbrush or the hands to the sculpting, the clay, or the fingers to the notes on the guitar, or just
feeding a worm to the baby bird.
Exactly. Then it doesn't get done. So you can adhere to natural law, or you can be dependent on artificial law and artificial intelligence, which then makes you a product of the state. And easily manipulated at that point.
Wait, okay.
Products of the state, you know, are easily manipulated, and they usually form the basis of the mob. The
Mhm.
individual is self-reliant. It finds its own way. It knows its own innate natural intelligence. It depends on that and only that, which makes one independent, right? If you're dependent on state for knowledge, it's artificial. So interestingly enough, we can get into more of these paradigms, but the great power of the universe centers the dualistic nature that the senses perceive. But the great power is not in the motion of the universe, it causes the motion. But that motion stems from in the exhalation and returns to in the implosion back to its source. But that source is the missing third link, which creates the triality that we live in. And if your mind can be centered enough, you can command duality as opposed to being tossed around on its waves.
Which seems like more work to be the slave of the system, you know, to me, anyways. Couple more slides, but I almost threw in another slide there because something you were talking about brought it up, but I was like, you know what, I'll save that.
Okay,
Save that for another project.
you got it.
A united civilization is possible only when human relations are balanced in all transactions that have to do with the distribution of the values of life, which all men persistently and constantly seek. There you go. Pretty self-explanatory too.
Absolutely. Again, it's the balance, you know, the wave, the dualistic wave of creation is integrative and disintegrative. And that which the mind relies on most performs that function. So
I love that picture. I'll put it up here again. It's awesome. Look at this picture.
yeah, that's the Might of Ages. Sorry for the interruption there.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
The Might of Ages is incredible. You see the multitude up the stairs to your left, the top left of the painting. That's generations of humanity, and it brings humans down and around as they progress from the left of the painting to the right, and they see a new world, and they build the bridge across the river to the new world. And it's an interesting cast of characters. In fact, I've heard so much recently about it that it would require probably 40, 50 minutes of explanation just to go through all the characters that are in this and how each one of them are, you know, in a way, shape, and form, telling a story of their own. And each has a rich historical background. This painting was completed in 1901. It was on tour in Europe and housed in at the Royal Palace in Tunisia, if I'm right, back in 1902. So it circulated around. It won honors in other countries, but was never really recognized in the United States as a painting of merit, which is unfortunate because Walter Russell was so overlooked. And as everybody knows, who says, who is this guy in the first place, which is the number one question I get and did get as president of the university for my tenure, was how is it that I'd never heard of this guy, right? So there it is. I mean, really, it's, some might call that purposeful, others, but I think it had to do a lot with him going into science. He wasn't allowed to tread on their holy ground, if you will. And when he presented a manual to the world of science, they ultimately rejected it because he did something that the rest of science didn't. He put the creator or consciousness into the picture. He didn't remove it and then just present, you know, an artificial intelligent universe. You know, natural intelligence is the light of mind. It's the consciousness which all life owes its existence. You know, and no body, that if you take the mind away from anybody, it becomes, again, a vegetable.
Yeah, Walter.
Wholly necessary.
He had said, "Hey, this is my science, and I just invented this, and it kind of came out of nowhere, out of my mind, or whatever." People would, but he was like, "Hey, this is the science of nature and of God and all this type of stuff." That's people don't like that.
Yeah, turned a lot of people off. They immediately cast him as a Christian, right? Because
Right.
he has these particular views, but there's no crime in using the word God if you know, and the crime is in the inability for people to see beyond uh, the mundane, and that's a lot of the reason we're in the mess we're in, is because people look at everything literally, which is, again, the body is all there is. There's no mind. So everything becomes a literal hedonistic interpretation. And that is worshiped over integrity in the integral way, or the way of the mind realizing that it has
Well, it's almost like this Gnostic stuff is creeping in, right? Like,
that too. That's
it's
another
like
factor, that
kind
this
of like,
this is all a place to escape. And that's interesting because in my assessment on the whole idea of dimensions, um, I don't want to spoil it, because this is going to be something that rocks some people for many years to come, because it's irrefutable what I'm going to show about this. And you never mind, I'm not going to get into it. I got
yeah,
to save it for the presentation.
I always poo-poo the other dimensions things too, so no worries, it'll be
But
fun.
it's irrefutable. Once it's presented, I'm going to really enjoy seeing people try to come up with a rebuttal.
Nice. Yeah, I got one friend that she's all into other dimensions and shit, and I'm like, well, let's not worry about those until
Just,
you've
just
mastered this
ask them,
one.
right? Ask them, why are you still here? If
Yeah.
that's the case.
Yeah, it's too funny. It's like I'd be more worried about this one than any other one first. So
Yeah. Yeah.
forget about it. Wait, one more slide. I have no idea why this is the last slide, but it just found its way in here. New thinking is always barred, outlawed, even before it's completely borne out. The mental abortionists stand ready to cut out the unborn thought. If the academician doesn't limit you, the crowd will.
Well, yeah, mental abortionists. Think of Roe versus Wade just now being overturned. But we've had mental abortions taking place for thousands of, thousand, let's say thousands of years, right? So you have one of the recent mental abortions that could have saved us the worry of blackouts and rolling blackouts with electricity, were when JP Morgan aborted uh, Nikola Tesla's um, Nikola Tesla's tower in New York, right? Which was, he was testing a vehicle that could run on electricity up to 100 miles away from the tower that he had built. And what did JP Morgan do? He sends his henchmen in and they burn it to the ground. So that idea was aborted. Um, he had the idea that all men should be able to use energy freely to lessen the strain and tension of man's, toil is one thing compared to work. Toil is what you do in a warehouse when you punch a time clock, and for 8 to 12 hours a day, you do the same thing over and over for 5 years, and then you retire from it only to die a year later. That's toil. So work is actually something that I think you can offer this differentiation so that people understand, when genius like Tesla wants to relieve the toil of man's day-to-day grind, he's not relieving him from work. He's relieving him from something that he could put that energy toward, working toward other things that fulfill the soul desires, as opposed to the desires for somebody to make widgets to make a man rich for meager living and toiling for that. So in other words, men should and women should have their maximization of their gift of working for themselves, to borrow the Ayn Randian model, that the product of man's labor should be his own creative things. This is what makes a life purposeful, and you're fulfilling not another man's desire, but your own. and if toil can be reduced by not having to pay an electric bill or load your wood furnace, which takes hours, to gather that wood up.
Man,
Yeah, hands and hours and blisters and back work. And, you're talking a lot of work to heat a home for a season, a winter season. And I know I speak from experience. It's great. It's like nature's gym, but at the same time, I, I doubt I'm going to be lifting big old logs when I'm 85,
yeah.
if I make it there. But nonetheless, I think I will. And that's part of the motivation for what I do now. But, to eliminate the toil from man, to give him the freedom to pursue his mental pursuits and not be aborted by people that think in lesser ways in order to keep man chained to the cogs of industry. They know what they're doing. They don't want people to be free, because then their little world of controlling the physical crashes around them. So they abort the mental ideas of these giants before they can take root, to basically keep their lower nature in control. And the problem is that people buy it up. They actually believe the lower nature is the higher one, when it's actually the opposite.
Hmm.
I mean, what we're seeing take place in the streets is animalistic. It's lower nature.
Hmm.
It's still nature. Nature does disintegrate things. And if your mental wave is that of disintegration, what's going to happen around you? Fires, statues being torn down, blue-green hair and 10,000 tattoos on your face with, 50,000 piercings. The body itself will become the enemy,
Hmm.
you know, and then look at the food that's eaten to create the condition. There was a pretty cool meme at one time, and it showed a couple 13, 14-year-old boys and girls. And then the next year it showed them after they did their transition. And they went from being like beautiful, having aesthetic value, to being the most ugly and transformed into this just hideous. It's like, what were they thinking? Over here, this is natural intelligence. And then this artificial thing that doesn't even look, it's like, how can that, where does that come from?
It's going from like its total extremes. That's the real issue too. I feel
Like
like when
seemingly overnight. So from integration, which is beauty and authenticity, originality, the seed of itself fulfilling itself, and then it just completely 180s to the other side of the spectrum and becomes a disintegrative, dissoluting body, which is like prematurely heading toward death, you could say.
it's like the JP Morgan and that, because they don't have that inner state, right? That solid state. They got to create control outside because they're inwardly chaotic. And it's kind of the same thing on the lower level with the people with their bodies, right? And stuff like that. Like they can't control what's going on inside, so they want to control everything that's going on outside of themselves.
Right. And if you're to look at the chakra system as more of centers of consciousness, so say your consciousness at the base level is the root that desires food, water, shelter. The sacral is where the very beginnings of the primality of desire itself stems from, which is the sex urge in nature. Now, the misuse of that urge, okay, your consciousness in our 20s, most of us are in our second chakra. That's where our consciousness is living. I'm just putting this out there as a attempt at modeling how consciousness can be higher and lower in nature. So it's still animalistic. So by your 30s, you move into the solar plexus area. In the 40s, you move into your heart chakra. 50s, you really learn to express what's in the heart. And then, your consciousness keeps moving up, let's say. It coincides with Kundalini in a sense too, but not Kundalini in 10 seconds, but Kundalini over 60 years. We're supposed to get wiser as we get older. That's what growing up means. Its consciousness is growing up as much as the body is. again, you can't leave consciousness, as Tessarian said, at the door. It's part of all these integral processes, and it's rarely involved in disintegration, because that's what bodies do naturally over time. They disintegrate naturally because natural intelligence says that at 80, there's going to be rings, there's going to be loose skin under the arms. You're not going to be the body you once were, because you're more inclined toward disintegration of your waveform, which is your body, your anode compressed waveform. At 40, you begin to die more than you begin to live. From 0 to 40, you're living more than you're dying. But at some point, that reversal of the wave becomes more prominent in the death half. And so death is what is shown in that. But for these young kids to go from a state of integration to dissolution and disintegration at 15 is very troubling, and I think historians of the future will look back on these days and they will absolutely have disdain, and no good memories will be recorded. The amount of suicides and mental illness and things of that nature that are coming out of this, it's more important for the eugenicists, I think, to win their war against humanity, which is why I'll bring it back to the start. What can't be aborted and will never be aborted is the spiritual inclination in man, which is his mind, and how it, through the renewal of that, we can see things like the Georgia Guidestones come down, and those kinds of things should come falling crashing to the ground, because they weren't built on the premise of human betterment. It was built on the premise that humans are, to be thoroughly controlled like a herd and eradicated if need be. So what we need to eradicate is artificial intelligence and our dependency on it. And we should integrate our wholeness of thinking with both hemispheres of the brain, integrating and building the new world we want to see that is abortion proof, for your ideas and for your hopes and dreams.
Nice. I think we should just leave it right there. That'll come in another slide, that quote.
Yeah.
Do you have any announcements you want to make or anything, Matt, before we shut her down here today?
No, not so much. You visit me at mattpresty.com. Just a whole lot of work going on in the background here. Summer's here and the gardens are good, and I hope everybody's gardening and growing food, and at least, looking into farmers markets. And, these are the things that are going to sustain us going forward. And hope everyone is doing well and surviving the heat if you're in the Midwest like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a few projects coming up as well. My friend Martin will be coming back here in the next month or so, and I'm trying to get this archetypes project coming out soon
Fantastic.
enough. So
Definitely send me a link.
Yeah, I'll send you a link when that comes out. You'll like it. Got
Sure.
some good quotes in there, some good slides, and it might be a 3 or 4 part series. So stay
That's
tuned
great.
for that.
I think what you're doing is important, and if it brings you joy and creates an avenue for you to express yourself, again, you're integrating, your knowledge into a sun of its own system, which hopefully you'll get some good planets to orbit to view it and share it far and wide.
Yeah, we've come together with people like you and Sarah DeHaven, and my friend Fiona is on there last week.
Yeah.
And we're just things are just happening, right? You kind of put it out there and these unseen forces come to your aid, people you're not sure if you get along with, but you like their work, and then you meet them, kind of like you. We just kind of hit it off, and there'll be more things coming with the both of us working together as well. So
yep, it's incredible what thinking balanced by action can do.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited that we did this today. I think this is part 5. So I hope people enjoyed the series, and we'll be back with more.
And if you're interested in the works of Walter and Leah Russell, the university could definitely use your support right now. Visit philosophy.org, order a book.
Yeah, if you're in the Midwest, go to the museum.
Actually, it's the East Coast.
Oh, is it?
The Russell Museum is in beautiful historic downtown Waynesboro, Virginia.
Oh, is that considered the East Coast? Is it?
Correct.
Okay, right on. I've
And
never
then
been.
Missouri, where I reside, is pretty much central center of the United States. That and Kansas and, you know, Midwest classical.
Cool. And I'll put the links below in the descriptions for all that
Awesome.
stuff. Okay, Matt.
All
Nice
right, Luke.
talking to you.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you
Cheers.
enjoyed.